North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. Welcome to the broadcast. Good to have you here. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary. That is not the news. Not at all. It's just my opinion. I differentiate between my opinion and the news because my news is not, my opinion is not the news. It just isn't. Neither is anybody else who does this job, but go ahead and do your absolute dead level best to figure out some way of finding somebody that does not put their opinion in their supposed journalism. Well, I know of one. That's me. Okay? However, that commentary is open for debate, which is what the last part of this broadcast formula is. You may debate anything you hear on this broadcast. By all means, please do so. You can do that a couple of different ways. You can go to the chat, which is going on right now on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Twitch. As a matter of fact, let's see what's going on here. Yvonne Field won the chat room derby today. Mike Renwee's here. Gail Marlowe is here. Hello, Gail. Good to have you here. You can go to the chat room, or you can call me directly at 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. This is an interactive broadcast. By all means, take part in it. Also, by the way, if you find value in this, do me a favor. Do a couple of different things. First of all, hit the like button. Like it. That's thing number one. Two, send it to your friends. Share it. And thing number three, subscribe. Please subscribe to these broadcasts. You'll be glad you did because I don't know who else does the news, but I know I do. And if I wasn't doing this broadcast, I'd be listening to it. Let's get busy. So, one of the most stinging and one of the most, obvious self-inflicted wounds in American government at all levels came about because of COVID-19. It was a coronavirus. It killed over 1 million Americans. It was deadly and terrible and awful. And what ended up happening is that so far nobody's been held accountable for unleashing it on the entire world. Over 6 million people have lost their lives around the world, 1 million in America alone. But I think the harshest, it's hard to say that there can be something political that would rival 1 million American deaths. But if there is something that could rival it, it would be the unbelievable draconian abuse of constitutional rights around the nation because of it, up to and including having people lose their jobs because they refused to get a vaccine that had not gone through FDA approval processes. As far as I know, they still haven't. And, that's talk about playing both ends against the middle. If indeed these things have not been formally approved by the FDA, that means that the silly liability protections on these emergency vaccines are still in place. And that's a bad thing. That's truly a bad thing. There are a lot of people that believe that they were badly damaged because of these vaccines. They need to be heard. There needs to be research done on their cases. Because I've got to be perfectly honest with you, there's more to this story. Now, as you know, I took my COVID-19 vaccines mainly because I wanted to serve you. I wasn't so much worried about the virus. I mean, my immune system is pretty strong. It absolutely is strong. I mean, I've taken flu shots for the last 15 straight years because I had the flu 16 years ago. Said, I'm not doing that again. Good God. Curtis King says hi from Levelland, Texas. Hello, Curtis. Do me a favor. Give Michael Wiest, the Beast, over at KLBT, a call for me and tell him I miss him. Okay, would you do that for me? I didn't know you were from Levelland, Curtis. I probably knew, but I forgot. Anyway, sorry, that was just a distraction from one of my buddies. So where were we? Oh, yeah. So I took these shots, and then I got COVID, just like a lot of other people who have taken these shots and gotten COVID. So there were other people that were damaged beyond all of this. They lost their jobs. They lost their jobs. Countless members of the military were sent home because they wouldn't get this vaccine. Now there are all kinds of remedies going on regarding those decisions. I mean, those military ones, that's going to involve an awful lot of back pay. All I can say is that. So, what has been going on with these healthcare workers that were fired? Illinois healthcare workers who were fired or otherwise impacted by their hospital's COVID-19 vaccine mandate will receive a $10 million settlement after settling or filing a lawsuit to challenge the rule. Matt Staver is the founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel, the group behind the lawsuit, talking to the Washington Examiner. Quote, "Let this case be a warning to employers who violated Title VII. It is especially significant and gratifying that this first class-wide COVID settlement protects healthcare workers. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. All those people that decided that you were just not a fit member of society unless you got one of these vaccines are about to pay for their decision-making. They're about to pay for their decision-making." The case centered around workers at North Shore University Health System who filed a lawsuit in October 2021 claiming their employer illegally refused to grant any religious exemptions to a COVID-19 vaccine mandate. It shouldn't have taken a religious exemption. In this country, we don't force people to take vaccinations against their will. We just don't do that. And we sure as hell don't cost people their jobs because they made a different decision. We just don't do that. This is just the beginning. There are going to be lawsuits like this all over the nation. The settlement approved in the Illinois Northern District Court will result in 473 employees of the system becoming eligible for compensation for being denied a religious exemption to the vaccine mandate, with any of those fired as a result of the rules being eligible for $25,000. The 13 plaintiffs involved in the suit will be eligible for an additional $20,000, while those who complied with the mandate to keep their jobs despite having religious objections will be eligible for $3,000. U.S. District Judge John Ness, Kness, who was appointed by former President Donald Trump, approved the settlement and appeared to side with Liberty Counsel's claim the mandate violated Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Anyone fired because of their refusal to get the shot will also be eligible for reemployment in the system. Anyone. Liberty Counsel Vice President of Legal Affairs Horatio Mihet said in a statement that the settlement should serve as a strong warning to employers across the nation. They cannot refuse to accommodate those with sincere religious objections to forced vaccine mandates. These people are completely correct. By the way, this from Fox Business News, in case you're wondering. Staver said his group is not just limiting the battle over mandates to Illinois healthcare workers, telling the Washington Examiner that Liberty Counsel is working for private sector employees in industries such as airlines and other healthcare systems. We've been working with thousands of employees across the nation. Many of them face the same jab or job mandate that is at issue at North Shore. Did you lose your job because you wouldn't take the shot? Did you? I wasn't put in that position. I took the shot because I saw it as a service to you guys. I wanted to let you know how I felt, what symptoms I had, if any. And, I didn't have any symptoms. However, I did get COVID, which kind of made me a little bit angry. David Bailey says hi. How's it going, David? God bless you, man. Thank you, by the way. Thank you very much. And you know why. By the way, Gary, thanks very much. I appreciate that too. And everybody else that took part in, I guess I don't have to keep it secret. There is a patreon.com account with the Wells Report on it. I was very disappointed that my video didn't show up on Patreon, so I've got to figure out a way to get that done. But if you would like to contribute to this broadcast, and I would really appreciate it if you could, please go to Patreon and go through the little maze there. I would really appreciate it. Let's see. By the way, Gary says, hey, y'all on Facebook, I like YouTube now because you can multitask. What does that mean, Gary? By the way, Facebook and YouTube and all those places, thanks very much for carrying this broadcast. I really appreciate it. So, did you get fired because someone decided that you had to have a shot or you will lose your job? Maybe you should contact a lawyer near you, and I think that would be a very fine plan. I really do. I mean, you just don't force people to take shots in these United States. It's just not something that we do. It was absolutely ridiculous. And it was a stunning uh, nomination about the dangers of government health care. I mean, it was fascist in the way this thing happened. I mean, all these people saying, "My God, you didn't get a shot. What's the matter with you? You will get a shot, or you will lose your job." Blah 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 blah. And I'm going, you can't do that. You can't force somebody to take. You cannot force someone to take an experimental vaccine. You can't do it. And finally, when it gets into the courts, finally somebody says, you know what, you can't do it. In this case, it's going to cost Illinois $10 million. The only problem I have with that ruling is it's not enough. I just don't think it's enough. But this is one of those things where you can argue about the wisdom of Operation Warp Speed and the vaccines. And I was all for that government project. But you'll note that what ended up happening is that it didn't turn into a government mandate until Joe Biden took over. I mean, the idea that you should take the shot, okay, that's fine. That's just simple free speech. But when people started losing their jobs because they wouldn't, that became a major problem. That became a major problem. And it's going to be very, very expensive. Real expensive for the people that decided to lord over their employees and say, well, you got to get the shot or you're going to lose your job. Okay, well, buckle your seatbelts. You're about to find yourself in a position where your lawyer is going to get a whole bunch of your money because you made a mistake. It's not that hard. It is not that hard to be American and realize that we are the land of the free, the home of the brave. And people who didn't want to take that shot were brave. And the people that decided to cost them their jobs, they forgot that this was the land of the free. You violate the Constitution and the Bill of Rights at your peril. That's just the way this is, and I'm very glad that this is the way it is. I do. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I sure appreciate you being here today. It's Monday. It is the 15th day of August, the Ides of August. And we do, my friend Wee says, yeah, it's the land of the free ride. Well, that was another important thing about the way they handled COVID-19. Yeah, a lot of people got checks. We'll be back in just a little bit. Thanks very much for being with us today. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. The other shoes are beginning to drop after all of the draconian, foolish politics that happened because of COVID-19 and the shots and all the garbage. Democrat New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy has removed regular COVID-19 testing requirements for a swath of public employees, including unvaccinated school employees, childcare workers, and state contractors. Murphy signed an executive order today lifting the state mandate that all school districts and state contractors ensure their employees are either vaccinated or receive regular testing. The order came days after the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention loosened its guidance on reducing the spread of the virus. Can't be done. It cannot be done. By the way, Texas, Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina ended the state's COVID-19 state of emergencies. With vaccines, treatments, and other tools to combat COVID-19 widely available, and with new legislation now providing the requested flexibility to the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services and healthcare providers to continue to respond, the state is poised to continue comprehensive pandemic responses without the need for the state of emergency. They're trying to untangle it, trying to unwind it. And I guess that's okay. Then there's this. The United Kingdom became the first country to approve Moderna's Omicron-targeting COVID-19 vaccine as a booster shot, paving the way for a variant shot to play a role in the planned fall vaccination campaign to shore up immune defenses against the virus. You know I took Moderna 3 times. Will I take this one? I'm not exactly sure. All right? I just don't know. Let's see. Got some comments here. I hope employers got slapped for firing the people who chose no shot. Yes, indeed. Apparently, they're slowly getting slapped for that. Who's going to fire the Pentagon brass? Nobody's going to fire the Pentagon brass. But there are going to be an awful lot of soldiers, both male and female, getting back pay because of those decisions. That's just my opinion. Has nothing to do with anybody else. Just my opinion. Let's see. Facebook on one tab, switch back 14. Okay. Facebook on one tab and switch back and forth between Facebook and YouTube and have both running at the same time. I just mute one of them. Why? Okay. That way you can see past the wall during breaks. What do you mean you can see past the wall? What? Let's see. Who else is waiting for the president to sign the new Green Deal? The Build Back Better plan. No, wait, it's the Inflation Recovery Act. I need a new heat pump. Yeah, exactly, Jeff. We'll be talking about that coming up a little bit later on today. So will I be taking the shot? I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know at this particular second, no, I don't think so. The reason I don't think so is because they don't work. So what they're saying is a bivalent vaccine is directed against both the original strain of SARS-CoV-2 and the first Omicron variant, known as BA.1, which drove large waves of infections over the winter. What this bivalent vaccine gives us is a sharpened tool in our armory to help protect us against this disease as the virus continues to evolve. This, according to June Rainey, who apparently is the chief executive of Britain's Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. I wonder if people are going to take another shot or whether or not they're just plain over all this. I would suspect they're over it. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you suspect that people were just pretty much over all of this hue and cry about vaccines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Me thinks so. This is the Wells Report. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button on the browser or streaming service that you're watching on. Please subscribe to this broadcast. If you'd like to support it, go to patreon.com/The Wells Report. Our telephone number 817-379-2172. Let's get together and debate. You going to take that shot if it comes to America? Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us today. Good to see you on YouTube. Good to see you on Twitter. Good to see you on Twitch. Good to see you on Facebook. Thanks for being here today. It's Monday. You get to go through another work week grind. Yeah. So I live in Texas. I came here in 2006. So what is that? That's 16 years ago. I'm never leaving. You know why I'm never leaving? Because real people live here. Real people live here. And they live real lives. They typically don't get wrapped around the axle about many things that lead them to behave badly, except, of course, when the Cowboys lose. Yeah, this place becomes the island of misfit toys when the boys lose. But that being said, Texas doesn't mess around. Texas is pretty straightforward. At least it is now. Yeah, Mike Renwee says, unless the state turns blue, in which case it'll just become another cesspool, because that's what Democrat politicians do with the places they live in. It's just something they can't avoid. But here's what's going on in Texas. And by the way, I've learned some things about America. The American attitude, Americanism, starts in Texas. We teach America how to be Americans, and we're doing it again. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is warning big blue city mayors that buses of migrants from the southern border will keep coming until the mainstream media and the White House address the crisis. Good. This is exactly what needs to happen. It is exactly what needs to happen. They need to be captured here in the United States for breaking the law. They need to be processed into the United States, given medical checks, vaccines if necessary, so on and so forth, and they should hop right on a bus. And then they should be immediately exported to all of these liberal sanctuary cities that have been talking about how we simply are sanctuary cities for illegal immigrants. Fine, we're sending them to you. Please, by all means, join us. 400,000 illegal immigrants have made it to the United States this year. 400,000. That, by the way, I think that number, by the way, is just in Del Rio, in case you're wondering, place where I was deployed for a while. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick warned the big blue city mayors that migrants are headed their way. Look out your window. You might see a bus coming to you one day in the future, said Patrick. New York Mayor Eric Adams has threatened to send busloads of New Yorkers to Texas to campaign against Governor Abbott in the upcoming gubernatorial election in retaliation for Texas sending busloads of migrants to the Big Apple. I'm going to say something a little harsh. So Jessica, if Dex and Meg Easton, thank you. If Dex and Easton are happening to be around the radio or the computer, just. So Eric Adams wants to send busloads of New Yorkers to Texas to campaign for Beto O'Rourke. This is the comment that I was just warning you about, so I've given you time. Mr. Mayor, you keep your socialist New York Yankee asses out of my Texas. Okay? Just in case you missed it. Mr. Mayor, you keep your socialist Yankee asses out of my Texas. You're not going to export your junk here. No. You just live right where you are. You created this mess. Now you live in it. Don't come down here and create a mess for me because misery loves company. No thanks. Sorry, I've been thinking about saying that for a while. I just had an opportunity. Yeah, Beto O'Rourke. Yeah, he thinks he's Hispanic, but he's actually just a big, tall, skinny Irish guy from El Paso. So Lieutenant Governor Patrick pointed the finger at Adams for making the issue political while warning his rhetoric may spike the Republican turnout in November. Don't threaten Texas, he said. Yeah, we don't like that around here. Patrick also pointed out the hypocrisy of Adams complaining about the influx of migrants in New York City. It's considered a sanctuary city. Yeah, Lieutenant Governor Patrick said it this way. We've now had 400,000 people in just the Del Rio sector in the last year. The population of that town is 36,000. That would be like us sending 80 million illegal immigrants to New York. If we can put pressure on all these Democrats, mayors around the city or in the county and the country, maybe they'll pick up the phone and call Joe Biden and say the border's not secure. Patrick argued the Biden administration supports open borders because they want to bring people in to take over the country. That's true. That's the only thing it could possibly be. They're not here to do work that Americans won't do. They are here to cast votes Americans won't cast. And that's just simply it. We're now on pace in his first term to be over 8 million people here legally, not counting the gotaways, just the ones we apprehend. That's the entire population of New York City coming to America. We'll be at 15% or more population in the next 5 to 10 years. Let's see. Hello, this is the Wells Report. May I help you? Whoa. Hi, can I help you? Hello? Okay, lost him. Darn. And I needed an extended warranty on my truck, too. We're now on pace, President Biden's first term, to be over 8 million people here illegally, not counting the gotaways, just the ones we apprehended. That's the entire population of New York City coming to America. We'll be at 15% or more population in the next 5 to 10 years in this country of people who are here illegally. Patrick added there were no complaints from liberal elected officials when the Biden administration flew underage migrants in the middle of the night to a New York airport. That's true. And by the way, when it comes right down to it, President Biden is the largest human trafficker in the United States. Human smuggler? Human smuggling? Yeah. Yeah, those are people that are smuggled over the southern border of the United States into America. And then they're smuggled into other countries around the nation without being told first that people are getting off the bus. He is the biggest human smuggler doing operations in the United States, period. I'm talking about President Biden. Another busload of migrants from Texas arrived at New York City this morning. A bus with Texas plates arrived at the Port Authority in Manhattan, and New York City Commissioner of Immigrant Affairs, Manuel Castro, shook hands with the migrants as an estimated 52 people disembarked. 46 were men. Castro said he learned from groups supporting migrants along their journey that 3 buses recently left Texas and approximately 120 migrants disembarked along the way, many getting off in Tennessee. Castro said 52 migrants arrived in New York City today. As of August 12th, Abbott's office said that Texas has transported more than 6,800 migrants to Washington, D.C. since April, and more than 360 migrants to New York City since the previous Friday. I think that is absolutely the right thing to do. I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. Really a good idea. All those people that live in these sanctuary cities, welcome to Texas. Hope you enjoy your new neighbors. Hope you do. By the way, Senator Marsha Blackburn was on Fox News this morning. She's sounding the alarm on the border crisis, warning President Biden's policies are to blame amid a migrant influx. We're being overrun. In case you want to know the exact term, it's not an invasion. We're being overrun. If you just want to know. Blackburn joined Fox and Friends to discuss how the crisis at the southern border has spiraled out of control as Texas Governor Greg Abbott continues to send busloads of illegal immigrants to cities nationwide. What we've heard is that they're threatening drivers from time to time, and they're wanting to go where their friends are. They look at this, Steve, as safe passage, if you will, across the country because they're being given a free bus ride wherever they want to go. Who said anything about that? No? No, I'm sorry. Arguably, you're criminals in the United States. What we'll do is we'll tell you where you can go. We certainly will. The sanctuary city policies many cities have across the country have large, big blue cities, not Chattanooga, but they have set up, and the cartels have been free to set up shop. That's why only men are coming. You know how Mexico has to be very, very careful of stepping on cartel business because a cartel hit squad will show up and murder you spectacularly in your own city? That's what we're importing into the United States right now. Yeah. They have their hubs, says Senator Blackburn about the cartels. It's where your gangs are located. It's where sex trafficking operations are located. Oh, yeah. Did I mention human trafficking? That's different than human smuggling. Human trafficking is about bringing people in for the sex trade. Where are they going? Abbott has sent migrant buses to places like New York and Washington, D.C. this month in a bid to spur action to mitigate the crisis. Tennessee is a common place for migrant buses to stop as they make the trek to the East Coast. Last week, one McDonald's employee was forced to call police after migrants were panhandling for food and money. Crime has escalated, said Blackburn. Look at the crime rates in New York and these sanctuary city mayors who are complaining. They should be talking to Joe Biden. This is his policy that's caused this. They basically rolled out the welcome mat. And we're going to be a sanctuary city, give benefits, voting rights, privileges of citizenship. Then by all means, enjoy your decision making. By all means. It's estimated that, as we just reported, 6,800 illegal immigrants have been bused to Washington, D.C. She had some old information this morning. We need to end this and allow our southern border to be secure and give these governors the ability to secure their communities across the southern border. Here. We absolutely must. As a matter of fact, I'm still trying to figure out why it is that we haven't. What I find fascinating about all this is the hypocrisy. The absolute hypocrisy. All these cities like Chicago and Philadelphia and New York and Chicago and to lesser degrees Seattle and Portland and all these cities that have bravely stood up for illegal immigrant rights have not been held accountable for this. Well, let's hold them accountable. Well, here are the migrants that you have been supporting all these years. Here are your migrants. You can absolutely do all of that. Congratulations. Thanks very much for doing your part to be a sanctuary city in these United States. But these people should all be sent to sanctuary cities. All these Democrat politicians are very proud of their sanctuary status in their cities. Here in Texas, we don't have that problem because sanctuary cities were made illegal. In the state of Texas, you have to follow the law. That's just the way that works. But elsewhere, you can pick and choose whatever law you want to work with and whatever law you don't want to work with. Well, not here. The law is the law. If you want to change the law, by all means, give it a shot. Good luck. Have a great time. You want to change the law? Go to the legislature, get the votes, so on and so on. Don't worry about it. Just do your job. You're not going to be successful. You're going to be beating your head against the wall. You're going to be pounding, you're going to be going through money like water for chocolate out of your political campaign contribution account. But you can certainly give it a shot if you want to. How bad is this? How bad is the hypocrisy of all of this? President Biden, who said he was not going to allow one more foot of border wall to be built as president of the United States, is sealing up the border in Arizona. Why? Because Senator Mark Kelly is very likely about to get beaten in that state for these very policies. It gives lie to this happy idea that from Secretary Mayorkas of DHS that the border's secure. Oh yeah, if the border's secure, and why are you finishing the fence? Why are you doing all that? I mean, I'm sorry, am I missing something here? I'm not missing a thing. This hypocrisy has got to be stopped. It's got to be stopped. And the reason that it happens is because, well, we can say anything we want to, and a lot of American voters will just take it hook, line, and sinker. Well, you should stop. You really should. You should stop being idiots when you vote. And the good news is you've got another chance in 85 days. You can prove that you're not a moron. And I certainly hope you do. Okay? Vote for someone else. Don't vote for Democrats. Is this a partisan show? No. I'm telling you not to vote for Democrats because we need to punish the Democrat Party for being socialists. You're listening to The Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. Thanks for being here today. This is The Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. You are also welcome to join the chat. Firing along on all cylinders right this very moment. And all you have to do is go to Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, or YouTube, and you can jump right in. Once again, the telephone number is probably easiest, 817-379-2172. So the DACA program, initiated by President Obama, it was attempted to be turned aside by President Trump, and then Chief Justice John Roberts of the Supreme Court of the United States decided to join an opinion that that presidential executive orders can indeed be law if the politics are right. Oh, I see. Yeah, that was a big mistake too. Yeah, that was a huge mistake. Yeah, Chief Justice John Roberts in the 6-3 majority codified the fact that presidential executive orders are basically just dictations from the Lord High and Mighty, Mr. President. Typically, executive orders can be set aside by the succeeding president, but not this time. Not this time. So DACA has been out there. It is the let's see, what is the actual name for it? The deferred, what is this? Hold on. Yes, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals Policy. Okay. Well, they've been doing this for 10 years now. It remains just as divisive as when it was first launched in 2012. This, by the way, from USA Today. A steady stream of legal challenges threatens its existence, leaving more than 600,000 DACA recipients in the United States in a constant state of uncertainty, frustration, and fear. Okay, I'm sorry. That's on your parents. You need to send them a bite me gram when you get a chance. All right? So there are an awful lot of people. A panel of federal judges in New Orleans, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, is expected to rule in the coming weeks whether to do away with the program, potentially erasing a decade's worth of protections for undocumented young people. You know, breaking the laws of the United States. Gosh, you know what? That has implications. You know, you brought your kid here 25 years ago. You got here illegally. You didn't think about what was going to happen to your kids at some point when somebody says, what's your immigration status? Oh, I don't have one. Oh. Well, we're going to have to send you back to your originating country. Well, arguably, this is my originating country. Well, okay. We're going to have to send you back to your originating country. But wait a minute, I don't know that country. Yeah, well, live and learn. Sorry, I don't mean to sound callous. But this is what happens when politicians get into law enforcement. This is what happens when the wrong politicians are elected. This is what happens when politics trumps law. We are not a nation of politics. We are a nation of laws. That is all. Once again, if you want to codify DACA into law, do it the right way. Do it the right way. Just start working on the legislative angles. Good luck with that. But if it passes, okay, it passes. And then we have a whole bunch of anecdotal evidence, undocumented young people. Yesenia Ramales. She was born in Puebla, Mexico. She came to the U.S. in 1994. She's been a beneficiary of the DACA program since 2012. She says, I haven't bought a house thinking I could become unemployed if the program ends at any moment. I haven't had children because I don't know if I'll be deported someday. Well, why wouldn't you have children? Oh, because you don't want to raise them in Puebla? Why? You can't plan a life living every 2 years. Okay. So go back to Puebla and start applying for immigration status. Start doing the things you're supposed to do. She was brought to the United States by her parents in 1994. She was 2 years old. She's a paralegal at the Florence Project in Phoenix, a nonprofit that, guess what, provides free legal and social services to adults and unaccompanied children in immigration custody. See, it's a cottage industry. She got here illegally in 1996 and now, 1994 rather, and now she works to get other people in the country illegally. I'm sorry, but my sympathy meter just closed back to zero. When people talk about DACA, people don't grasp we're no longer children. We're already adults. I'll be 30 years old in a month, and I'm still in this frustrating situation where uncertainty is constant. Well, then go fix it. Go and fix it. As a matter of fact, you probably don't have to go back to Puebla. Okay? You don't have to go back to Puebla. What you can probably do is you could probably start immigration proceedings right now, but you don't want to spend the money. Yeah, that's very expensive, isn't it? Well, once again, welcome to being an adult in the United States of America. Start applying for citizenship. If you're a paralegal, you got a skill. If you kept your nose clean, you got a good record. Start doing it the right way. And oh, by the way, you might want to take your parents off your Christmas card list because they just probably cost you 25 grand. Because that's about how much it costs to be able to find yourself with American citizenship. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I wish you all the luck in the world. But I also wish that you would please start following the laws of the land instead of waiting for a government to come and solve your problems for you. That's not what happens in the United States, no matter who's in charge. And oh, by the way, if it does happen in the United States, you're going to regret it. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. I'm sorry. Did I sound harsh? North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary. That's not the news. It's simply my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And as all opinions are, they are debatable. And that's what the last part of this is, debate. You can take part in our chat room, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. You can do that. The chat room is flying today. Be a part of the broadcast. Also, by the way, if you're watching on Facebook, you're watching on YouTube, or any place else, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Subscribe to this broadcast. It's important. I mean, not that you just subscribe, but it's also, this is an important broadcast. We actually do the news here, and it's interactive. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. This stopped me in my tracks today. Being reported from two offshore sources. I just went through the mainstream media outlets. This story is not being reported in the United States yet. Why? Well, I don't know why, John David, because you haven't told me the story. Well, here it comes. Former President Trump today has claimed that his passports were taken by the FBI during the raid at Mar-a-Lago last week. They seized his passports? Are you freaking kidding me? He called it an assault on a political opponent. Well, what else could it be? By the way, if you have an answer to that, by all means, please share your opinion on that. I mean, if you've got a better answer for this not being an all-out political attack on Donald Trump, then by all means, tell me what you're thinking. Talk me off the ledge. All right, so in the raid, this is the quote from former President Trump. Wow. In the raid by the FBI on Mar-a-Lago, they stole my 3 passports. One was expired, along with everything else. This is an assault on a political opponent at the next level never seen before in our country. Third world, he was writing that on Truth Social. He likely has a regular blue passport issued to U.S. citizens and a red diplomatic passport used for official government travel. He would have received a diplomatic passport as president. Also, U.S. citizens are allowed more than one blue passport book if they're frequent flyers, such as if they need to apply for more than one visa at a time. But without a legal passport, President Trump will not be able to travel outside the United States. Now, if you're charged with a federal crime that's serious enough, then they will confiscate your passport. Is that what you're doing? You don't get to take somebody's passport. You do not get to take somebody's passport unless you have a really good reason. And this is starting to get into deep water here. This is starting to get into deep water. And I am really infuriated that the mainstream media in the United States is not reporting this story. This is from the London Daily Mail. I've had to do that before on this broadcast. I have had to go offshore for important stories in the United States that were censored, spiked, left out of American media sources. What's going on here? This is a big deal. You don't see somebody's passport unless, of course, you're charging them with a crime, a serious one. And we know that's not happening because if that was going to happen, he'd already be charged. He would already be charged. Or at the very least, he would have been charged in the court of public opinion by a mainstream media that has Trump derangement syndrome. So it's unclear what passports were seized and if it was done because the former president is considered a flight risk. For what reason? It's also unclear if President Trump currently has a valid passport in his possession. President Trump's office did not immediately respond to the LondonDailyMail.com's inquiry. The former president has been battling back since he announced his Palm Beach residence was raided by federal agents including warning the FBI and the Department of Justice that terrible things will happen into the United States if the temperature doesn't come down. President Trump told Fox News Digital that he's offered to do whatever he can to fix the simmering tensions because people are so angry at what's taking place. More about that coming up in just a moment. If you've been around the Wells Report for any length of time, what have you, you know that I always double source things. So this is the London Daily Mail. Well, how about this? This from the UK Times. Once again, mainstream media not following the story. President Donald Trump today claimed his passports were stolen and in the FBI raid at Mar-a-Lago. He called it an assault on a political opponent. Donald Trump claimed his passports were stolen in the FBI raid at Mar-a-Lago. Without a legal passport, he wouldn't be able to travel outside the United States. This is a breaking news story. It will be updated, but this came out a few hours ago. Why isn't it being reported by the mainstream media in the United States? Why? Telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. So what are the people what are the people saying on the chat? Here's what it says. One person said, "Son of a bitch." Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, what we're doing now is we're killing the messenger. Somebody else who's on the other political side says the Daily Mail is UK's equivalent of the National Enquirer, top-notch journalism. Not true. You have no idea what you're talking about. The London Daily Mail is a serious newspaper. So is the UK Times. You don't know what you're talking about, Alan. You just don't. Trump's passports were not listed among the itemized property receipt that was unsealed on Friday at the request of the Justice Department. Well, then why is President Trump being quoted by two news sources offshore that his passports were taken? Why is that? Well, they may have been inside one of the 26 boxes that were described as being seized by FBI agents. Well, okay. If they were seized, then what needs to happen is that they need to go through those boxes. They had plenty of time. They were there for 9 hours. You don't take someone's passport unless they have been indicted and are charged with a crime, a serious one. And I do have to point out that, well, they haven't seized Hunter Biden's passports. They haven't seized Hillary Clinton's passports. What's the story there? But then again, they actually didn't do raids on any of those houses, did they? Of course, they wouldn't need to with Hunter Biden. They've got everything in the world on his computer, but they refuse to investigate it. So two news sources offshore reporting that President Trump's passports were seized by the FBI. It's real simple. You go through the boxes, you make sure you're looking through that and so on and so forth. You find passports and so we got to take these out and put them aside. It's real simple. It is real simple. These actions must stop, says someone on chat. We are losing our country's rights every day. Correct. And then there's this. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security have issued a bulletin. A bulletin from the Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Bureau of Investigation was sent to law enforcement agencies, warning of increased threats following the FBI execution of a search warrant at former President Donald Trump's Florida estate. In the days since the warrant was executed, the FBI and DHS have seen an increase in violent threats against law enforcement, judiciary, and government personnel, including a particular threat to place a so-called dirty bomb in front of FBI headquarters. General calls for civil war and armed rebellion have also increased in recent days on social media. Now, whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? By the way, Arthur Davenport is telling me that Fox Newsweek and MSNBC have reported on this. Well, okay, I went through all those news sources and didn't see a thing. Didn't see one thing about it. All right, so once again, I'm reporting honestly. I didn't see it. As a matter of fact, before I came up here, I started checking for those stories. I'll check them again at the next break. A couple of minutes from right now, I'll check them again. In the days since the warrants were executed, these violent threats have increased, including to place a so-called dirty bomb in front of FBI headquarters. The bulletin states that many of the threats include references to the claim the 2020 election was stolen, in addition to other perceived claims of government overreach. Several of the threats are specific, according to the bulletin, which states the FBI and DHS have identified multiple articulated threats and calls for the targeted killing of judicial law enforcement and government officials associated with the West Palm Beach area, including the federal judge who approved the search warrant. The bulletin cites on August 11th, an individual attempted to forcibly enter the FBI Cincinnati field office. The individual, Ricky Schiffer, allegedly fled from the scene. Officers responded, entered a standoff. He lost his life. Agents from the FBI executed a search warrant on the Florida Trump estate and seized items, which include 11 sets of material that are listed as classified, as well as some that were marked as top secret. We reported that here on the Wells Report. So Nancy says they say personal documents were seized. They did not say passports. I will look. But once again, this is an interactive news service. Okay, people get to make contributions, especially Arthur Davenport, who's a friend of mine. We went to high school together, for crying out loud. I mean, you know. And Arthur has a pretty good track record of talking about stuff that he knows to be true. I disagree with a lot of it, but still, I mean, it's Arthur. Okay, so there you go. One last quick little aside here. Dirty bombs are completely ineffective. Totally and completely ineffective. You cannot come within walking distance of a dirty bomb and suffer any ill effect in any way, shape, or form. You just don't have to worry about that. And you're saying, well, John David, I don't know, it's a dirty bomb. You could be irradiated. Look up at the ceiling where you are right now. Oh, look, right up there. You know what that is? Well, it's a smoke detector. Yeah, it sure is. It's filled with radioactive material. Yeah, that's true. Yes, that's absolutely true. It's filled with radioactive material. That's how it senses the smoke. See? Yeah. So dirty bombs are ridiculous. As far as the Civil War thing, as far as that, we'll continue talking about that, and you can too. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. This is the Wells Report. Don't forget, hit like, hit subscribe, and if you want to contribute to the broadcast, by all means, go to patreon.com/The Wells Report, and they'll take you right through how you can make a donation. This is the Wells Report. Back in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Arthur just told me that the story of passports being taken during the Mar-a-Lago raid is now being reported by other news organizations, specifically the New York Post. The story hit an hour ago. Fox News, the story hit an hour ago. MSNBC, 41 minutes ago. I had the story 2.5 hours ago. Mighty slow on the mainstream media. Just saying. So we were talking a little bit about this FBI DHS bulletin to local law enforcement, talking about how, well, there might be social unrest. Well, yeah, there might be. But whose fault is that? Whose fault is this? Now, you can't make threats. You can't make death threats to people. You can't make death threats against anybody in law enforcement, including the FBI. You can't make death threats against Department of Justice personnel. You can't do that. You simply can't. You can't show up with weapons at a Trump rally. You have to show up with the Constitution of the United States and an American flag. We've talked about that. You can't do anything else. You can't cross police barriers. You can't make death threats. Because what's happening is now the FBI is beginning to hit the panic button. Well, this is what happens when you start a bonfire. You start a dumpster fire, and pretty soon, man, somebody calls the fire department. No, this is one of two things. One, this is an amazing, stupid mistake by the FBI and the DOJ. Or two, this is an attempt to egg Trump supporters into a fight. Which do you think is more true? Which do you think is more true? Is the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, the Biden administration, are they trying to lure Trump supporters into a fight? Is that what they're trying to do? I think that's valid. I think that's a valid assessment of what might be happening. I do. If we rise to the bait, we will lose. Don't do it. If you know somebody that's floating out these death threats and so on and so forth, and it's possible that these don't actually exist, because remember, we're dealing with the mainstream media, we're dealing with the FBI, we're dealing with the Department of Homeland Security. They may not be being honest. This may be all fabricated. Do I truly believe that? I'm not real sure that that's actually the case. But how can you not at least ask the question based on what they've been doing lately? You have to ask that question. You have to ask the question, is this a fabrication by the FBI and the DOJ? We don't know. But we do know that they are serving up a mighty tantalizing piece of bait for Trump supporters. And we'd better not take it. We had better not take it. The most serious and most effective weapon we have is a vote. And that's coming up in 85 days. Relax for 85 more days. Right? Please do. It's absolutely ridiculous that the FBI is trying to incite problems and social unrest in the United States. But that's what it looks like to me. That's what it looks like to me. What do you think? Waiting to hear. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Chat room's buzzing. You can be there too. YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Twitch. 817-379-2172. For his part, President Trump, after reporting to whomever would pay attention to Truth Social, at the beginning of the day, it was only the offshore media sources that reported that President Trump was missing his passports, which means the FBI took them. That's what President Trump is saying. They, by God, better give those back right now. Right now. Before the end of the day, before close of business, you get those passports back into that man's hands. Right this minute. By the way, former President Trump says he will do whatever he can to help the country after the FBI raided his Mar-a-Lago home. He told Fox News that the temperature has to be brought down while stressing the American people are not going to stand for another scam. In an exclusive interview with Fox News this morning, his first since the raid, President Trump has said his representatives reached out to the Justice Department to offer help amid outrage over the FBI's unprecedented raid on his private residence, in which agents seized classified records, including some marked as top secret. Trump is disputing the classification of those records, saying the records had been declassified. That'll end up in court somewhere. The country is in a very dangerous position, said President Trump. There is tremendous anger like I've never seen before, all over the scams and this new one, years of scams and witch hunts, and now this. If there's anything we can do to help, I and my people will certainly be willing to do that, said Trump. There's never been a time like this where law enforcement has been used to break into the house of a former president of the United States. And there is tremendous anger in the country at a level that has never been seen before, other than during very perilous times, said President Trump. In point of fact, Mr. President, I understand that your rhetoric sometimes, is less than careful, but they didn't break into your house. They didn't break into your house. It's worse than that. They actually had a signed warrant from a federal magistrate after the FBI had been in that house in June. I mean, what were they doing? If this stuff was all fired important, how come they didn't take those boxes before? Why didn't they take them when they showed up in June? Why didn't they make a phone call to this, whatever this guy is? Let's see. By the way, on the chat room, there's some things that prove what people don't know. There are a couple of different things here. There was an executive order from President Obama that allowed the possession of documents by presidents and vice presidents only. They were exempt from any of the rules having anything to do with other custodians of records. And that's not being reported either. As far as TSSCI files, the president maintains that those were declassified. They are his documents in most cases, I'm sure. And once again, that's going to be a political fight that's going to end up in a courtroom, which is a bad idea because courtrooms shouldn't have anything to do with politics. And oh yes, let's not forget all of the other top secret SCI documents been found in other people's possessions, specifically Hillary Clinton. And let's say, well, wait a minute, that's whataboutism. Well, whataboutism is absolutely justified when we don't have the affidavit that describes the items to be searched for and seized, and two, when we don't have information about anything else having to do with this. That affidavit has to be very straightforward. The other thing about that is that Alan Dershowitz says that whataboutism is not whataboutism in this case because we don't have enough data yet, and we need to have it. Why don't they? Why don't they? Why don't we have it? Because it's quite possible that there's no there there. That's why. So the president is doing anything he possibly can to sort of cool the temperature. President Trump said, I think they would want the same thing, to cool off things. I've never seen anything like this. It's a very dangerous time for our country. I will do whatever I can to help the country. Trump reflected on the years of fake witch hunts and phony Russia schemes and scams. That's a quote. Nothing happens to the people who perpetuate that. Nothing happens with them. And then they break into a president's house. They did not break in. He called it a sneak attack, where it was totally no one ever thought a thing like this would happen. Trump told Fox News that FBI agents broke in and took whatever they wanted to take. They didn't break in. They had a warrant. Trump said FBI agents told his team on Mar-a-Lago premises to turn off the cameras and no one can go through the rooms. They could take anything they wanted, put anything they wanted in. My people were asked to stand outside. True. President Trump went on to suggest the FBI could have planted anything they wanted during the raid. We brought that up too. The chain of custody has been broken. This is a problem. This is a problem. People are so angry at what has taken place, said Trump. Whatever we can do to help, because the temperature has to be brought down in this country. If it isn't, terrible things are going to happen. We can't let that happen. And I've said this before several times. This is not the time. This is not the time for any kind of violence, including death threats made over the internet. Stop. Anybody who's doing that is rising to the bait and justifying a totalitarian response from a regime, specifically the Biden administration, that has already shown that they are absolutely willing to trample anybody's rights for any reasons they deem necessary based on politics. That's all there is here. That's all there is here. So there's that. Now, this was also something that happened today. A federal judge in Georgia has denied Senator Lindsey Graham's bid to avoid testifying before an Atlanta area grand jury investigating interference into the 2020 election, rejecting the Trump allies' claim that he was shielded from such scrutiny by legislative privilege. U.S. District Judge Lee Martin May ruled that Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis had shown extraordinary circumstances and a special need for Senator Graham's testimony on issues relating to alleged attempts to influence or disrupt the lawful administration of Georgia's 2020 elections. The judge's ruling preceded another piece of bad news for key allies of former President Donald Trump in Georgia. An attorney for Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, said that Fulton County prosecutors now regard Giuliani as a target of their investigation. Graham, the South Carolina Republican, asserted that he was engaged in legitimate inquiries as a lawmaker under the Constitution's speech and debate clause when he contacted Georgia officials following the 2020 election. The court finds that there are considerable areas of potential grand jury inquiry falling outside the speech or debate clause protections. Additionally, sovereign immunity fails to shield Senator Graham from testifying before a special purpose grand jury. The judge, however, left open the prospect that the privilege could apply to some questions posed by prosecutors working with the grand jury. The mere possibility some lines of inquiries could implicate Senator Graham's immunity under speech and debate, the speech and debate clause, does not justify quashing the subpoena in its entirety, because there are considerable areas of inquiry which are clearly not legislative in nature. Graham will appeal the decision, according to a Monday statement issued by his office. The Constitution's speech or debate clause prevents a local official from questioning a senator about how the senator did his job. Here, Senator Graham was doing his due diligence before the Electoral Count Act certification vote, where he voted to certify the election. So, once again, when it comes to this sort of stuff, I don't really opine on it. I just simply report the news because we don't know anything. We don't know anything. But, once again, I will say this as a matter of opinion only. You know, We haven't seen any of this stuff before. We have not seen any of this stuff before. We haven't seen prosecutors going after people because some politician questioned an election. Until now. We haven't seen that before because that's part and parcel of what's going on. You don't have to go back very far. You just go back to Hillary Clinton and what her conduct was after the 2016 election. Nobody did anything there. Nobody did anything there. And so that's where we stand. Now, as far as this grand jury thing happening in Atlanta, well, yeah, what we're doing is we're seeing, once again, we're seeing the Justice Department or the legal system being used to quash whatever politics you don't like. It's not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. Also being reported by USA Today, Georgia prosecutors have notified lawyers representing Rudy Giuliani that the personal attorney to former President Donald Trump is now a target of the widening election interference investigation led by Fulton County District Attorney. Giuliani attorney Robert Costello told USA Today prosecutors made the notification today to local defense attorneys in Atlanta. The former New York mayor, who's scheduled to testify before a special grand jury in Atlanta later this week, had made wide-ranging claims that voting systems altered Georgia ballots while ignoring a hand count audit that confirmed President Joe Biden's victory in the state. Giuliani also asserted that about 65,000 underage voters, more than 2,500 felons, and 800 dead people voted in the state. All of those claims have been debunked by the Georgia Secretary of State, which found no underage voters, only 74 potential felony voters, and only 2 votes that may have been improperly cast in the name of dead voters. According to court documents seeking Giuliani's grand jury appearance, Fulton County authorities are highlighting the Trump lawyer's December 3rd, 2020 appearance before the Georgia State Senate, in which he offered a video recording of election workers at State Farm Arena in Atlanta, purporting to show suitcases of unlawful ballots from unknown sources outside the view of election poll watchers. Within 24 hours of the state Senate hearing, the video had been discredited by the Secretary of State's office, concluding no voter fraud of any kind has taken place. Fulton County prosecutors did not immediately respond to requests for comments. Costello said the action raises questions about the prosecutors' recent efforts to secure Giuliani's grand jury appearance set for Wednesday. Attorneys for Giuliani, initially characterized as a material witness in the investigation, said they had not been informed their client's status had changed when they sought to delay his appearance last week because of health reasons. Giuliani's lawyers said doctors had not cleared him for air travel following a recent heart procedure. A local judge reset the Giuliani appearance for Wednesday. We plan on being there, said Costello. The prosecutor's action, first reported earlier Monday by the New York Times, marks a dramatic escalation in the Georgia inquiry, which was set in motion by Trump's 2021 phone call to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, seeking additional votes to overturn Biden's victory in Georgia. Giuliani now joins more than a dozen other figures in the Georgia inquiry to be designated as targets. Willis had previously informed 16 others allegedly involved in the state scheme to install fake slates of electors to overturn the 2020 election. Once again, not going to say one way or another on this one because I don't know what's going on. I'm not going to be in a situation where I start trying this over the media. I'm just assuming that Fulton County has a legitimate beef. They've impaneled a grand jury. They issued a subpoena to Rudy Giuliani. And all we can say on that is it was upheld by a judge. Who was the judge? Well, we know her name. I believe it's a her. She spells her name Lee. Lee Martin May. I will look during the next break to see who she is. I'm hoping she's not playing politics. Because if she is playing politics, then we, the people of the United States, are going to have to make some changes. Because if federal judges want to play politics, then federal judges need to be elected by we, the people. If that's what they want to do, that's fine with me. We elect all of our judges in Texas, including Supreme Court justices. Yeah, Texas Supreme Court judges are elected by the people. And that's a good thing. It also takes a lot of the politics out of the judicial system. And anybody who's been paying attention to the judicial system in the United States realizes that we absolutely have got to get politics out of law enforcement and certainly the judicial process in this nation. Because this is what happens. Now you have political prosecutions. Bad idea. Bad idea. Boy, it gets uglier every second, doesn't it? You are listening to The Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. You stay right there. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number again, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. This being reported by the Seattle Times. It's been in the news elsewhere. In the weeks after former President Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, Fox Business host Lou Dobbs claimed to have tremendous evidence that voter fraud was to blame. That evidence never emerged. But a new culprit in a supposed scheme to rig the election did. Dominion Voting Systems, a maker of election technology whose algorithms were designed to be inaccurate, according to Lou Dobbs. Maria Bartiromo, another host on the network, falsely stated, according to the Seattle Times, that Nancy Pelosi had an interest in this company. Janine Pirro, a Fox News personality, speculated that technical glitches in Dominion software could have affected thousands of absentee mail-in ballots. Being called unfounded accusations, the Seattle Times is attributing those accusations as among the dozens cited in Dominion's defamation lawsuits against Fox Corporation, which alleges that Fox repeatedly aired false, far-fetched, and exaggerated allegations about Dominion and its purported role in a plot to steal votes from President Trump. And this is so full of bias. I'm doing the best I can here. The assertions made day after day included allegations that Dominion was a front for the communist government in Venezuela, and that its voting machines could switch votes from one candidate to another, are at the center of the libel suit, one of the most extraordinary brought against a U.S. media company in more than a generation. First Amendment scholars say the case is a rarity in libel law. Defamation claims typically involve a single disputed statement, but Dominion's complaint is replete with example after example of false statements, many of them made after the facts were widely known, and such suits are often quickly dismissed because of the First Amendment broad speech, free speech protections, and the high-powered lawyers available to a major media company like Fox. If they do go forward, they are usually settled out of court to spare both sides the costly spectacle of a trial, which would be more costly for Dominion. Now remember, Dominion voting machines have been illegalized all around the world because of similar aspersions cast against them. Dominion refuses to allow an open inspection of their algorithms. They flat testified that the machines could not be tampered with over the internet. If that's the case, why are they hooked up to the internet? So Dominion has a chance to lose an awful lot more in these lawsuits, and all they have to do is find a group of people that actually would see them through. I don't know whether Fox News Corporation has the stones to do that. But somebody will get into a courtroom and, as a part of discovery, will demand that every single part of a Dominion voting machine be explained in open court. Dominion does not want that. So there is a balance here. Will they probably settle this out of court? Probably. Will that be unfortunate for all of us? Definitely. Definitely. Now, I'm not casting aspersions on Dominion. My big beef with Dominion, they won't tell us how the actual machines work. It seems completely logical to me. It's as plain as the nose on my face. Pretty damn plain. That you can't have a voting machine that you don't get to know how it works. You have to understand how the voting machine works. If you don't have that, then you don't have you have no idea what is going on with those voting machines, which is part and parcel of the 2020 election. You know, this is Dominion throwing its weight around and saying, my golly, you know what? We're going to sue people for defamation. Oh, okay. Well, then let's, by God, get into court and let's find out just exactly how those machines work so we know that you're right. Look at it this way. If you're able to prove that these machines are on the up and up, you got nothing to worry about. You got nothing to worry about at all. Something tells me that this is going to be settled essentially with nothing. With nothing. I don't believe that I don't believe that any money is going to change hands. This is just going to disappear. But then again, I've been wrong before. I probably could be wrong again. So there you go. I just look at this and I go, okay, well, you know, by all means, do whatever you think you ought to do. Dominion has filed a $1.6 billion case against Fox News. It's been progressing in a state court where? Why, Delaware. How interesting. It's been inching ever closer to trial. There have been no moves from either sides toward a settlement, according to interviews with several people involved in the case. They don't have to right now. They don't have to. Just leave it alone. Just let it simmer a bit. That's what's happening. They're just letting it simmer a little bit while people figure out what they want to do. All I can say is I can hardly wait to find out how Dominion voting machines work. I can hardly wait. And I know you can hardly wait too. Or at least I'm pretty sure you can hardly wait. Because if what I think is true, oh my. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for being with us today. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. It's Monday. Back in a sec. See you in a bit. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We bring you the news. We bring you analysis for both bias and fact. I make commentary, not the news. And we debate. We debate the news, we debate the commentary. Y'all come. Two ways to do it. You can call me on the telephone anytime you wish. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. By all means, give us a call. Or you can take part in the chat room, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook. It's okay with me. This is an interactive news broadcast. It was a stain on the United States of America. It was a stunning defeat for us that was claimed by the Biden administration here in this country when we withdrew from Afghanistan. It was horrible. No one argues the self-inflicted wound that we perpetrated on ourselves based on a political calculus that was proven to be disastrous for our nation. And it's being written about today in USA Today. Not exactly your, shall we say, impartial arbiter or reporter of news. But listen to this. This, by the way, comes from Francesca Chambers and Joey Garrison on USA Today. You can read it for yourself. Go to usatoday.com. President Joe Biden's vast foreign policy experience was supposed to be his most significant asset. Then we saw horrifying video of civilians clinging to a United States military plane as it lifted off from Kabul airport, the collapse of Afghanistan's government, and a terror attack that killed 13 American soldiers and at least 170 Afghans less than 7 months into his presidency. The chaotic U.S. exit from Afghanistan, ending a 20-year conflict, undercut Biden's pledge to restore competence to the White House. 1 year later, it hangs over the Democrat president, even as his counterterrorism strategy yields consequential results with the killing of a top al-Qaeda leader, Ayman al-Zawahiri, last month. Well, consequential results, as in plural? What consequential results, plural? Just a question. By the way, this is biased. The use of the word, say, for example, chaotic. I mean, there was chaos, but once again, I think that's a little heavy-handed from a journalistic standpoint. Lieutenant Daniel Davis, a twice-deployed veteran of the war, said this, quote, "I remember so much that we genuinely did do, all of it just going away as dust in the wind. It's really painful." President Biden's approval rating fell below 50% for the first time after the messy U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan and the Taliban's return to power. His standing still hasn't recovered amid a convergence of other crises, including 40-year high inflation, supply chain bottlenecks, the extended COVID-19 pandemic, and the spread of monkeypox. Monkeypox. Gosh, guys. Seriously? Monkeypox. Sorry. I realize that it's a health issue, and I realize that there are people suffering with it, and I understand that. But last we heard there were 6,000 cases. 6,000. It was called an emergency by the president. You'll have to ask him. It damaged what were relatively good feelings towards him, said Thomas Allen Schwartz, talking about the President of the United States. He's a distinguished professor of history at Vanderbilt University. It was a self-inflicted wound. Al-Zawahiri's killing, combined with a series of legislative wins for Biden in Congress, have produced Biden's most successful stretch as president, but it's unclear whether the winning streak will affect his low approval ratings, hovering around 40%, well, more like 37%, or boost Democrat fortunes in the November midterms. Before ending America's longest war, waged in response to the 9/11 terrorist attacks, President Biden argued the U.S. had accomplished its main objective, ensuring Afghanistan won't again be a base for terrorists to attack the homeland. I'm sorry. Where did they get al-Zawahiri? Oh, that's right. It was in Kabul. Oh, yeah. Okay. Is that in Afghanistan? Yeah. So, arguably the world's next arch terrorist living in Afghanistan, and it's not a base for terrorist actions against the United States? Does that strain anybody else's logic besides mine? The fall of the country's capital city to the Taliban before the U.S. ended its military operation, the chaotic evacuation of Afghan refugees and the American embassy personnel raised questions about Biden's governance and decision-making that have persisted amid new crises. And the searing images of frantic Afghans clamoring to be evacuated on the final U.S. flights will haunt Biden and most surely be part of his legacy. Zalmay Khalilzad, the former U.S. Special Representative for Afghanistan Reconciliation, who served in the Trump administration and stayed on under President Biden, anyone who was watching it could see it was not well done. The final phase was quite bad. Khalilzad helped broker the Trump administration's agreement with the Taliban, which set the conditions for the U.S. withdrawal. President Biden, his administration officials, and backers of his withdrawal, such as Khalilzad, said that while mistakes were made during the final phase, America is better positioned now than it was a year ago to take on growing challenges outside the region while fulfilling the president's pledge not to allow Afghanistan to become a launching pad for terrorist attacks against the United States. Over the course of 17 days, U.S. military and its allies and partners evacuated 124,000 people out of the country by air. This according to John Kirby, coordinator for strategic communications at the National Security Council, emphasizing in an interview with USA Today, quote, "The evacuation was historic and unprecedented in its size and scale. No one ever said that it was performed perfectly." Yeah, that's one way of saying it, I suppose. Davis, who was among veterans who supported the withdrawal, said Biden's military advisors should have foreseen the Afghan army, unmotivated, disorganized, plagued by low morale, would struggle against the Taliban, even though he credited Biden for making the tough decision to leave. Davis said he's the only president that had the courage to take the political risk and order what should have been done a decade earlier at the least. Let's see. That would have been 2020. That would have been 2010. Let's see, who was the president in 2010? Oh, yeah. It wasn't just Biden. He came at the tail end of this. It was President Biden who took the hit. In recent weeks, Democrats have said publicly that President Biden should not seek re-election in 2024. Republicans have worked to link the disastrous departure from Afghanistan to Russia's war in Ukraine and Chinese aggression against Taiwan. I think there's a direct cause and effect between the collapse of Afghanistan and Putin's decision to invade Ukraine, said Representative Michael McCall. He's from Texas. He's the lead Republican on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. President Biden, for his part, has been unrepentant about his decision. There was no way to get out of Afghanistan after 20 years easily. Not possible when you did it, no matter when you did it. And I make no apologies for what I did. Okay. Well, he certainly can't make an apology even if he felt like he could, can he? He can't do it. He's got to double down on his decision making, because that's what the main thrust against him is. His decision making. He can't back off now. He's stuck with it. The president believed leaving was in the national interest, said John Kirby, and so did the majority of Americans. True. But not like that. And not leaving a whole bunch of American citizens behind either. A majority of Americans did say the U.S. should leave Afghanistan amid the drawdown. A little more than a quarter approved of Biden's handling of the pullout. The topic has almost completely fallen off the radar for most voters now. But critics of the withdrawal said it could reemerge as an issue in the next presidential election. I guarantee it. President Biden's exit hurt U.S. credibility, unleashed a human rights nightmare in Afghanistan, and paved the way for terrorists to operate from there again, said Richard Haass, top aide in the State Department when President George W. Bush led the U.S. into Afghanistan after 9/11. Haass, now president of the Council on Foreign Relations, said, "I believe it will be seen as an error." For his part, John Kirby and others flatly reject the view. "We view the killing of Mr. Zawahiri as a representation of exactly what the president said he was going to do. This was not about trying to bookend the evacuation of Afghanistan. It was not about chasing polls or approval ratings. It was about meeting his commitment to the American people." President Biden said last year he was sticking to the agreement because the U.S. had already begun a drawdown of forces. America could not be tethered to Afghanistan with terror threats metastasizing elsewhere. Saying staying would have meant risking more American soldiers' lives and sinking resources into a more than $2 trillion war that resulted in more than 2,500, make that 2,400, American casualties. He also said the U.S. needed to prioritize other foreign policy challenges, including its ability to compete with China. Administration officials are leaning heavily on those arguments now as the U.S. and its allies pumps billions of dollars into Ukraine's defense against Russia and tensions escalate between Beijing and Taiwan, an island that considers itself sovereign from China. Republicans argue the quick collapse of Afghanistan after President Biden's withdrawal displayed weakness to adversaries, which opened the door for President Vladimir Putin and his invasion of Ukraine and Chinese hostility toward Taiwan. Well, it certainly didn't help. Afghanistan was a turning point in American foreign policy, said Representative McCall from Texas. He went on to say, after Afghanistan, our foreign nation's adversaries began to be more emboldened and empowered. We're no longer projecting strength as a superpower. We're projecting weakness, and weakness always invites aggression. I think you're seeing that on the global stage today. McCall went on to say that complications with the Afghanistan withdrawal were foreseeable, and he drew a parallel between President Biden and one-term President Jimmy Carter, who lost his 1980 reelection bid amid high employment, high inflation, and the Iranian hostage crisis at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. A lot of people do care about this. Then there is the story of the actual people still there. This comes from NBC. They start their story with the words, "It was a stunning rout." We'll have more about that coming up in just a couple of minutes here on the Wells Report. I thank you very much for being a part of this broadcast. It is a sad anniversary in the history of the United States. We left our allies hanging. We gave our adversaries the keys to the kingdom, and we left. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number again is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Coming up in just a couple of moments, we'll take a look at that NBC article about life in Afghanistan. It's next. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Khalid Mawahid and Henry Austin write this for NBC News. It was a stunning rout. A year ago today, a ragtag army of extremists swept into Kabul without firing a shot after having seized most of Afghanistan. After spending trillions of dollars on military and humanitarian aid, the two-decade U.S.-led international campaign to remake the desperately poor and violence-ridden country was over. Western nations raced to depart in a largely chaotic and embarrassing exit. The victorious Taliban, whose previous government was toppled in the aftermath of 9/11 after refusing to hand over the author of the attack, Osama bin Laden, promised to form a, quote, open, inclusive Islamic government. Instead, after the collapse of the U.S.-backed administration of Ashraf Ghani, the Taliban introduced policies that form a system of repression and discriminates against women and girls in almost every aspect of their lives, according to a recent report from Amnesty International that said the suffocating crackdown against Afghanistan's female population is increasing by the day. The group had decimated protections for those suffering domestic violence, detained women and girls for minor violations, and contributed to a surge in child marriages, according to the report, adding that it had reneged on promises to allow women to continue to work and girls to continue their educations. Some of those protesting against the restrictions have been tortured and abused, according to Amnesty International. Malika, who's 21, said she lived in daily fear for her life because her husband, Bashir, was being hunted by the Taliban because he used to be a government worker. She told NBC News from Kabul this year, if the Taliban finds us, they will immediately kill us. When the Taliban want something, they will arrest their whole family until they get the person they want. Then that person disappears, and no one ever knows if they're alive or not. Bashir has heart problems, unable to leave the house to work, so she was earning $3 a day by washing clothes. This was not enough to cover their costs, but she said their landlord had allowed them to defer their rent. Another NBC story reports it this way. This from Haider Abazi. The future looks bleak for the vast majority of Afghans. At least 43% of the population is living on less than one meal a day. 97% of Afghans are expected to be living below the poverty line by the end of the year. Families have resorted to selling their organs to eat, and others have sold their own children in order to survive. As global leaders sought to economically isolate the Taliban, their policy approaches have crippled the economy, destroyed the banking sector, and plunged the country into a humanitarian catastrophe that has left more than 24 million without enough food to eat every day. This, according to Vicky Aiken, Afghanistan director of the International Rescue Committee. The organization added that unless this is addressed, the current humanitarian crisis could lead to more deaths than 20 years of war. In the years since the ultra-conservative, insular, and violent Taliban returned to power, this desperately poor and violent country has rapidly deteriorated. While little progress has been made in the last 2 decades, in terms of democracy, personal freedoms, and women's rights, has been reversed. The Taliban have shown they have not changed from the group that left in the 90s until they were toppled by U.S. forces. After capturing rural areas and later cities over the course of years, the Taliban swept into the capital without firing a shot. That is the legacy of these United States regarding their incursion into a little country called Afghanistan. And that rout happened 1 year ago today. The shame of it. The absolute shame of it. Back with more in just a moment. Thanks for watching The Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Chat room's open. By all means, join us. Mike says a stunning rout begins to come close to beginning to describe what happened in Afghanistan. Truer words never spoken. Famed author Salman Rushdie is recovering in a New York hospital after he was repeatedly stabbed on stage in front of a New York audience in an attack that left him with severe injuries, according to his family. The family of the 75-year-old author, who had for decades lived under threat because of his writings, said he was in critical condition yesterday after the attack, which ended with the assailant being held down by staff and guests, and Rushdie, bleeding, airlifted to a hospital. Though his life-changing injuries are severe, his usual feisty and defiant sense of humor remains intact, said his son Zafar Rushdie. Rushdie was taken off a ventilator over the weekend, but was still being treated for injuries, including 3 stab wounds to his neck, 4 stab wounds to his stomach, puncture wounds to his right eye and chest, a laceration on his right thigh. This according to Chautauqua County District Attorney Jason Schmidt, over the weekend. The district attorney also said the author may lose his right eye. The suspect, identified as 24-year-old Hadi Matar of Fairview, New Jersey, was arrested by a state trooper after the attack and taken into custody. Authorities are investigating what motivated the stabbing, which prompted the state to increase police presence in Chautauqua, according to New York State Police Superintendent Kevin Bruin. Rushdie's writing have won him several literary prizes and much scrutiny. His 4th novel, The Satanic Verses, drew condemnation from Muslims who found it to be sacrilegious. The late Iranian leader Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini described the book as an insult to Islam and the Prophet Muhammad and issued a religious decree, a fatwa, calling for his death in 1989. Iran, in its first official reaction to the attack, blamed Rushdie and his supporters. Interesting. Regarding the attack on Salman Rushdie, we do not consider anyone other than Rushdie and his supporters worth of blame and even condemnation, said Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Nasser Kanani in a televised news conference today. Iranian officials, quote, categorically and seriously deny any connection of the assailant with Iran, unquote. He added that the Iranian state media, this was according to the Iranian state media, we have not seen anything else about the individuals that carried out the act other than what we've seen from American media. We categorically and seriously deny any connection of the assailant with Iran. Rushdie was being introduced Friday to give a lecture at the Chautauqua Institution when a man lunged on the stage and stabbed him before a stunned audience. Staff members and guests then rushed onto the stage, held down the assailant before a state trooper assigned to the event took him into custody. Also injured in the attack was Ralph Henry Reese, another speaker who suffered a minor head injury. It was very difficult to understand. It looked like a sort of a bad prank. It didn't have any sense of reality, said Reese. And then there was blood behind him. When there was blood behind him, it became real. Joyce Lucier was sitting in the second row when she saw the attack unfold. She heard people screaming and crying, she told CNN, saw people from the audience rushing to the stage. The suspect, Matar, had arrived in Chautauqua at least a day before the event, bought a pass for it 2 days prior. Schmidt called the stabbing a targeted, pre-planned, unprovoked attack on Mr. Rushdie, saying the Matar had traveled to Chautauqua by bus with cash, prepaid Visa cards, and false identification. The felony complaint against Matar indicated a knife was used in the stabbing. It remains unclear how the suspect may have entered the event armed with a knife. There were no security searches or metal detectors at the event, according to a witness who CNN is not identifying. We assess for every event, and we think the appropriate security level is, and this one was certainly one we thought was important, which is why we had a state trooper and sheriff presence there, said institution president Michael Hill, who defended his organization's security plans when asked during a news conference whether there would be more precautions to future events. Over the weekend, New York Governor Kathy Hochul met with Chautauqua Institute stage crews and the police trooper who helped subdue Rushdie's alleged attacker, calling them heroes. The team that was on the ground here and the EMTs, firefighters, and those who show up and literally kept the man alive as they were transporting him did an extraordinary job, according to the governor. Matar, whose authorities said has no documented criminal history, pled not guilty to the charges of second-degree attempted murder and second-degree assault with intent to cause physical injury with a deadly weapon. His public defender, Nathaniel Barone, told CNN over the weekend. Matar has been very cooperative, communicating openly, said the attorney, without discussing what was said during the conversations. Mr. Matar benefits from the presumption of innocence, a fair trial, and due process, as does every individual in our country, said Barone. The attorney cannot comment on any matters or discussions with Matar due to client confidentiality, and looks forward to a preliminary hearing set for August 19th. Matar faces up to 32 years if convicted of both charges. He is described as being a quiet person who kept mostly to himself. The story goes that his family had no idea that he was a fanatic Muslim. The suspect had enrolled in April at State of Fitness Boxing Club in North Bergen, New Jersey. The gym's owner, Desmond Boyle, told CNN. You know that look. It's the worst day of your life. He came in every day like that. Matar frequented the gym about 3 or 4 times a week and was a very quiet kid. It's a brotherly environment, family environment. We try to involve everybody. He was to himself pretty much. Most of the time. The attack on Rushdie generated an outpouring of support from leaders worldwide. U.S. President Joe Biden said in a statement he was saddened by the attack. Salman Rushdie, with his insight to humanity, his unmatched sense of story, with his refusal to be intimidated or silenced, stands for essential universal ideals: truth, courage, resilience, the ability to share ideas without fear. These are building blocks of any free and open society, said President Biden. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said in a tweet he was appalled by the attack on Rushdie, who is also a British citizen, and after issuance of the fatwa began a decade under British protection. Appalled that Sir Salman Rushdie had been stabbed while exercising a right we should never cease to defend. Right now, my thoughts are with his loved ones. We are all hoping he's okay. Rushdie's former wife, TV host Padma Lakshmi, said in a tweet that she was relieved that Rushdie is pulling through after the Friday nightmare. Worried and wordless, can finally exhale, now hoping for swift healing. Press freedom nonprofit PEN America CEO Suzanne Nossel said in a statement, PEN America is reeling from shock and horror at the word of a brutal, premeditated attack on our former president and stalwart ally, Salman Rushdie, who was reportedly stabbed multiple times while on stage speaking at the Chautauqua Institute in upstate New York. We can think of no comparable incident of a public attack on a literary writer on American soil. Salman Rushdie has been targeted for his words for decades, but had never flinched nor faltered, said Nassel. He has devoted tireless energy to assisting others who are vulnerable and menaced, as the motive behind the stabbing remains under investigation. The New York governor condemned the attack. I want it out there that a man with a knife cannot silence a man with a pen, said Hochul. And then, of course, there's Hadi Matar. He is described as he was described by his mother as being radicalized during a 2018 trip to the Middle East. Matar's mother, Silvana Fardos, disowned her son after hearing about the alleged attack. Fardos said that Matar's 2018 trip to visit his father in Lebanon changed him from an outgoing American-raised boy to an angry introvert who criticized her for not raising him to follow Islam. Fardos divorced Matar's father in 2004. He soon moved back to the Middle East. The first hour he gets there, he called me. He wanted to come back. Fardos told the London Daily Mail of her son's trip. He stayed for approximately 28 days. The trip did not go well with his father. He felt very alone. I was expecting him to come back motivated, to complete school, to get his degree and a job, but instead he locked himself in the basement. He had changed a lot. He didn't say anything to me or my sisters or his sisters for months. I couldn't tell you much about his life after that because he isolated me since 2018. If I approached him, sometimes he says hi. Sometimes he just ignores me and walks away. He sleeps during the day and wakes up and eats during the night. He lives in the basement. He cooks his own food. Nevertheless, Fardos said she was shocked to hear her son allegedly stabbed Rushdie, saying she didn't think he was capable of such a thing. Matar is accused of stabbing Rushdie in the neck, face, and body during an event at the Chautauqua Institute in New York. The author is expected to lose an eye and reportedly had nerves severed in one of his arms. Rushdie had been a target of an Iranian fatwa for decades. The Islamic regime in Iran took offense to the contents of Rushdie's The Satanic Verses and called for attacks on the author and anyone else associated with the book's publication. Iran, for its part, steadfastly denies their involvement, but then defended the attack. It's logic that only fits in a certain portion of the world, in my humble opinion. An Iranian official today denied that Tehran was involved in the stabbing of author Salman Rushdie, though he sought to justify the attack in the Islamic Republic's first public comments on the bloodshed. The remarks by Nasser Kanani, the spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry, came 3 days after Rushdie was wounded in New York State. This, by the way, from the Associated Press. The writer has been taken off a ventilator, is on his road to recovery. He's 75. He faced death threats for more than 30 years after his novel, The Satanic Verses, whose depiction of the Prophet Muhammad was seen by some Muslims as blasphemous. In 1989, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, issued a fatwa or Islamic edict demanding the author's death. And while Iran has not focused on Rushdie in recent years, the decree still stands. By the way, there are other decrees that are out there as well. One on John Bolton, former ambassador to the United Nations. Another against Mike Pompeo. There are indeed bounties attached to those fatwas. I do remember that President Trump was badly criticized for not reacting to Russian soldier bounties on American soldiers. Fascinates me that he also doesn't care about bounties on former ambassadors and former secretaries of state. I wonder why that is. By the way, regarding the attack against Salman Rushdie in America, we don't consider anyone deserving reproach, blame, or even condemnation except for Rushdie himself and his supporters. So in other words, this young man who picked up a knife, ran up on stage and tried to kill Salman Rushdie is absent blame, condemnation? Really? What are we supposed to think? What are we supposed to think about you if that's truly what you believe? Then again, if you run crossways to the Iranian government, they don't blame anybody but you either. It's not our fault that a whole bunch of people decided to beat you within an inch of your life and throw you off a building. Oh, okay. Yeah. In this regard, no one can blame the Islamic Republic of Iran. It was your theocratic leader that issued a murder warrant against an American citizen. Why can't we blame you? Just another question. Just another question, hoping for an answer. If you've got one, by all means, please do say something. 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. Looking forward to what you have to say. Also, join us in the chat room. We are more than willing to chat with you. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go there right this minute. This is Monday. It's the 15th day of August, year of our Lord 2022. I am John David Wells, and I sincerely appreciate you joining us today for this edition of the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number again is 817-379-2172. It happened last week, or at least the reporting happened last week. 4 Muslims in Albuquerque, New Mexico had been slain. Most of the people that are a part of the Muslim community assumed that it was an outsider with an axe to grind against Islam. It does not appear that that is the case. Arrested for these murders is Muhammad Syed. He arrived in the States. He had had a checkered past. He'd been arrested several times for domestic violence and captured on camera slashing the tires of a woman's car. He'd been in the United States from Afghanistan for 6 years. The lengthy pattern of violence shocked members of the city's small, close-knit Muslim community, some of whom knew him from the local mosque, and once again initially assumed that the killer was an outsider with a bias against Islam. I think based on knowing his history now, and we didn't before, he's obviously a disturbed individual. He obviously has a violent tendency. Syed's 51 years old. He was acquainted with his victims and was likely motivated by interpersonal conflicts. He was arrested Monday night. He remains in custody. Prosecutors say he's a dangerous man and plan to ask a judge this week to keep him locked up pending trial on murder trials in connections with 2 of the shooting deaths. Syed is also the primary suspect in the other 2 homicides, but police say they will not rush to charge him in those cases as long as he remains in jail and does not pose a threat to the community. He is a married father of 6. He is denied involvement in the killings, this according to his defense attorneys. Few details emerged publicly about Syed's life before he and his family came to America in 2016, but a U.S. government document obtained by the Associated Press says he graduated from Rehman Baba High School in western Kabul in 1990. Between 2010 and 2012, he worked as a cook for Al-Bashar Jala Construction Company. In December of 2012, Syed fled Afghanistan with his wife and children, according to the report. The family made its way to Pakistan, where Syed sought work as a refrigerator technician. A native Pashto speaker who was also fluent in Dari, he was admitted to the United States as a refugee in 2016. The very next year, according to court records, a boyfriend of Syed's daughter alleged that Syed, his wife, and one of Syed's sons pulled him out of a car and punched him and kicked him before driving away. The boyfriend was found with a bloody nose, scratches, and bruises. He told police he was attacked because Syed, a Sunni Muslim, did not want his daughter in a relationship with a Shiite man. Which begs the question. I'm wondering whether or not we're going to hear from the DOJ about assigning a hate crime charge to this case. I mean, that is going to happen, right? In 2018, Syed was taken into custody after a fight with his wife about her driving. Syed told police his wife had slapped him in the car, but she said he pulled her by the hair, threw her onto the ground, and made her walk 2 hours to their destination. Months later, Syed allegedly beat his wife and attacked one of his sons with a large slotted metal spoon that left his hair blood-soaked, according to court documents. Syed's wife told police everything was fine, but the son, who was the one that called them, told officers Syed routinely beat him and his mother. 2 of the cases were dismissed after the wife and boyfriend declined to press charges. The third was dismissed after Syed completed a pre-trial intervention program. In 2020, Syed was arrested after he allegedly refused to pull over for police after running a traffic light. That case also eventually dismissed. If you're trying to understand how violence in a particular person evolves, you just have to know he didn't wake up last year and become a serial killer, said former FBI profile Mary Ellen O'Toole. He had experience with violence, and that's the challenge of law enforcement, to identify what is your experience with violence and when did it start. Syed told detectives he had served with the Afghan National Army Special Operations Command, a small elite group of Afghan soldiers who fought the Taliban. He said he likes AK-47 style weapons police found at his house because he used one in Afghanistan. I'm sure he did. Yet the U.S. government profile the AP reviewed did not list any military experience. Syed turned 40 the year the elite force was formed in 2011, likely too old to be selected for combat in the heaviest fighting. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, who served 2 tours in Afghanistan as a senior fellow and military expert at the Defense Priorities think tank, said it sounds a little fishy. He said while Syed may have been a soldier, Special Forces guys are usually 22, 25, maybe 30 because it's so physically demanding. Syed family lived in a small duplex on the city's south side, working class part of town, where many of the older homes and apartments have security bars affixed to their doors and windows. The area has become a magnet for Afghan refugees and other immigrants looking to make a new home in New Mexico. I certainly hope there's a hate crime charge added to that. I wonder if there will be, or whether that's just safe for Republicans. You've been listening to the Wells Report. Thanks very much for being a part of the broadcast. I will see you again tomorrow right here. Have a good one. All right. God bless all y'all. Thank you very much for sticking around with us.